Everybody, welcome all our Torah Anytime viewers. Tonight we're learning Leilu Nishmat Avraham ben Chaim Yehuda and Yecheskel ben Avraham. So tonight we're going to be discussing Be'ezrat Hashem I use the term skulot because it's a little bit of a tricky word when it comes to this, but skulot of losing money, because generally, when we think of the term skula, we think of it in a way of gaining something. And the way that it works is that the way that skula works, not to get too much into it, is that there's a certain there's a certain greater power is a better word. There's a greater power in a certain mitzvah or whatever it is that the skula is, that has that capabilities, the ability to provide more merit to pertain whatever it is that you're looking for, again, associated with that skula. So skula, and generally, for the way that the general people look at it, is that there is a way of getting something, I don't want to say in a shortcut, but kind of in that manner, a little bit of more of a shortcut kind of way, or a little bit of more of like a catalyst or a boost type of way. And, when dealing with people, first of all, I guess the top two areas of skulot that, when I deal with people, it's either money, and that, by the way, is like the number one by far, and then number two is probably like shidduchim, number three is probably like kids. But there's like a certain areas of where, it's important, and money comes up very high in the skula realm. Now, it's interesting when people go and people have difficulties with money, or better yet, more of a... even not difficulties, but not really achieving what they want to achieve in their financial goals. They feel like there's something that's holding them back, and they don't usually associate that with something that's wrong with themselves, but rather what's wrong with the surrounding. A very, very common thing that comes up is that if someone, let's say, is not doing well financially, or panasa, the business is not doing so well, a very common cause that they point to would be evil eye. Forget about me, an evil eye, or some other, a type of Kabbalistic, concept that it has sort of nothing to do with me, but like there's something other, an outside force that's causing me to not be successful where I want to be successful. Now, while it can be true and it can be possible, that should not be the first place to look at. I can't tell you how many times I had these conversations with people, and it's funny because like these people obviously don't listen to my classes because they know where I would go with this if they would be listening to my classes, and that would be like, I have people that come in and they sit to me and they say, okay, fine, Rabbi, I have an evil eye. I'm like, what makes you think I have an evil eye? Just a general idea. When you speak about a certain topic, those are the questions that you get on that topic. So I spoke along 2-3 years ago about evil eye, and to this day I still get these questions on the evil eye. So people come over to me and they say, listen, Rabbi, I have an issue. I have the evil eye. I'm like, what makes you think you have an evil eye? So I tried this business and it failed. I tried this business and it failed. I tried this business and it failed. Must be that there is, some sort of evil eye in it. So when they come to me, these are not people, again, generally that are listening to Torah classes or coming to Torah classes that I would say this to, but I look at them and be like, you keep Shabbat? And it was very obvious to me, again, I have to ask it because I can't judge it, but it looked very obvious that they didn't keep it. So they're like, no, I don't keep Shabbat. You keep kosher? No. You keep the laws of modesty? Which again, sometimes it's very, very obvious, and the answer is no. So I asked them, well, what makes you think that the reason of your cause of destruction or lack of success is because of evil eye? Maybe it's because you don't keep Shabbat. Maybe it's because you don't keep modesty. Maybe it's because you don't keep family purity. You don't go to mikvah. You don't keep nidah. Maybe it's because you don't need kosher. There's a lot of other reasons that maybe we could point to. Why is it that the first place that you go to is evil eye? Why is it the first place is because the fact that somebody spilled salt and then they moved in and all these other things, because it doesn't have to focus about me. So when we look at the fact of financial distress or financial difficulties, it's very important to stop for a second and not put the blame on other people or other places. Yes, it could be an answer, it could be a reason for it. That shouldn't be our initial thought. Our initial thought should always be that when something happens, we have to look at two angles. We have to look at the spiritual angle and we have to look at the physical angle. On the spiritual side, even though evil eye technically is on the spiritual side, but what I'm referring to in the spiritual side is really what we're looking at ourselves. Meaning that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu did something to me, if God did something to me, and I'm not successful, or I'm losing, or whatever it is, something that there is difficulties, then maybe there's something that I need to change. Maybe there's something that I need to do that is causing this bad to happen. On the physical side of it is that maybe there's something that I need to change. So for example, somebody's going to start a business and the business unfortunately wasn't successful. So now they have to look at it from the physical side. Okay, now why was it successful? Maybe you didn't put enough effort in. Maybe you didn't put enough money in. Maybe you didn't hire the right people. Maybe you went into something without knowing anything about it. There's a lot of reasons why it couldn't have been successful or it wasn't successful. On the other hand, you have to go on the spiritual side. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu cause you to do this financial loss? Maybe you didn't go daven with a minyan. Maybe you weren't dressing modestly. Maybe that you didn't keep Shabbat properly. Maybe you did it. There's the whole list of things. So today, B'ezrat Hashem, what I want to go through is the spiritual aspect, the spiritual side of things, of what causes one to go and to have this financial difficulties. Now, before we get into this, we really have to focus on a certain concept, and that doesn't really have to do with this class. It has to do with life in general. That many people feel they don't have a certain blessing in their life. Again, it could be panasah, and we'll use panasah as an example, money as an example, because this is the topic of today. But when you think about it, the fact that you don't have the blessing of panasah, and I'm using that word and as opposed to wealth or anything else, is you feel that you're, in general, let's try to clarify this. In general, the way that people feel they're holding in a financial status is when they compare themselves to others. This is a relative type of feeling. Again, not always, but in many times it is relative. So when you go and you think about it, again, it depends on who you're comparing it to. But if you're comparing it to a very successful movie star, then you're right. Maybe your life isn't as glamorous, as great, as successful, as wealthy, as powerful, and as popular as this star. But if you look, instead of looking at someone in a parallel, time frame, look at somebody from 300 years ago. The way that you're living now greater than the most wealthiest people alive 300 years ago. And dare I say, even the kings of 300 years ago. If you think about it, you're sitting in your home and you have heating, you have cooling, you have, besides the fact that you have by a flick of a switch, you're able to make your room either hot or cold, but you also have the ability to turn on light with a flick of the switch. You realize that, you ever even think about that? In the olden days, you had to have a candle, and then you had to have oil, you have to have this, and you have to make sure, and then it flickered. Where do you have, if somebody goes and loves light, anybody in the, I'm obsessed with light. Everywhere I have tons of light. And if you think about it, in the olden days, if you want to produce enough light, you would have to light thousands of candles or thousands of these, jars of these oil candelabras, or these things that you would have to physically refill. Now with a flick of a switch, now if you have Alexa, you have other types of, probably shouldn't have said that. Now everybody that has Alexa that is playing this is now listening. But in any case, you go there, you can have, if it's a smart switch, you're able to turn it on. You don't even have to move. You're able to turn on your air conditioner by just a voice recognition, by just saying it. Talk about a king would have to go and be like, okay, fine, my servant, go and light up the room, or go and they were able to. Now you're also able to do that to that level. Even if you don't have a car, you have public transportation, which again, you have heating and cooling inside this transportation. In the old days, they didn't have that. In the old days, they didn't have. If you want to go and fly across, you want to fly to Israel. So you have to get on a plane, you fly to Israel. Even if you sit on coach, you know what? No. Even if you sit in the baggage, in the downstairs, where it's freezing, there's no seats, there's nothing. That's still flying better than the kings used to fly, 300, no, they didn't ever fly. The kings used to travel 300 years ago. They would have to go on the ship, and the ship, forget about turbulence, the ship would constantly be, there was no shocks on the ship. The ship would sway back and forth, and everybody would get seasick. There was no Dramamine. There was nothing that you would be able to go and get rid of the seasickness. There were people that would want to go and travel. Even if you had all the money in the world, you still couldn't travel like you travel the most poorest person today. We have better food, cleaner food, better entertainment. The list goes on and on when you think about it. So when we stop for a second and we feel like we're lacking in panasah, in wealth, in money, whatever it is, we're lacking because it's the way that we're looking at life. It's the way that we're looking at, look at everybody else. So this guy has a Rolls Royce and I only have a Lexus. This guy goes and flies in his private jet, and I can only fly in first class. This guy could go and have his own car. I have to go on a bus. Whatever it is, everybody on their own level. But it's all dependent on the way that we look and the way that we observe things. And that's why I want to show you a few things. I really should have. I'm going to show you this board, but try to focus on whatever I'm pointing at. I just wrote it out just to save some time, but I realized this might be more confusing than actually saving some time. So look at something so beautiful. So on this concept on our viewpoint. So looking at this top right corner. So what we see over here, I'm trying to make sure that both cameras are able to see this. When we look at Hebrew, the word for eye is ayin. It's ayin yud nun. That's the eye. When we look at ayin and we take the letters that come right after the letters of ayin, look what we get. So after ayin comes pei, after yud comes kaf, and after nun comes samach. Rearrange, that spells kesef, that spells money. Meaning that the way what happens, what is somebody that's constantly looking at money? What are they considered? Look at something so beautiful. You take the letters ayin. Now I have to write this down. You take the letters ayin and you rearrange them. They come out spelling ayin, nun, yud, and that is ani, a poor person. Somebody who is constantly going and is constantly focusing on what's only the money, that's someone who's a poor person. Why? Because we know that our sages tell us that Ezu ha'ashir, who is somebody who is wealthy, hasamech bechako, somebody who's happy with what he has. He's not looking at somebody else. He's not looking at the money for somebody else. He's focused on whatever he has, and he's appreciative. And even if somebody goes and is appreciative but is constantly working, we know that there's still a lack in it. There's a midrash in Koheleth Rabbah that says if somebody has 100, what does he want? He wants 200. What's a matayim? He wants 200. He wants double. Why? Because no matter what we have in the financial world, we'll always feel lacking. We'll always feel like we want more. And there's something very beautiful, the way that the word mammon is spelled. So mammon is mem, vav, nun. Now, a letter is mem, but also the letter mem there's also the spelling of the letter mem. So that is the spelling of the letter mem is mem and endemem. It's sort of like the same. To give you an example, the letter bet. The letter bet, to spell it, is bet, yud, and taf. So here, that is the spelling of the word bet. The spelling of the word mem is mem and mem, the same thing. And it's something very interesting. When you look at the word mammon, mammon in Hebrew means money. In Aramaic, mammon, so the way that you spell it, mammon is all the letters that their spelling is exactly the same letter twice. Mem is mem, mem. Again, mammon, the second mem is mem. Vav, again, is spelled vav, vav. And nun is spelled nun, nun. Meaning that mammon is something that you always have. No matter how much you have, you always feel lacking. You always feel like you don't have enough. So when we look, just as a sort of an introduction to this type of topic, when we feel like we don't have enough, sometimes it's because of our perception. Sometimes it's because of the way that we perceive things and the way that we see things. And if we change a little bit our perspective, we'll see not only how successful we are, but how amazingly blessed we are. Now, getting into the topic at hand of what causes financial difficulties, with that introduction in mind, we'll start off with the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai on Parashat Pinchas goes and says that, when economic difficulty afflicts a generation, the first step that should be investigated is the sin of promiscuity. That's the sin of znut. For this sin, more than all others, reduces prosperity. And again, this is mentioned numerous times in the Gemara, in the Midrash, in Kabbalah, that looseness in sexual morality is closely connected to your economic situation. The Gemara in Gittin, page 57a, goes and says that it once happened that a price of grain stood at 40 measures per dinar, a certain value. And the price went up so that a dinar now bought, a coin now bought 1 measure less than was before. So the Beis Din went, and they investigated, and they found that a father and a son had relations with a married woman on Yom Kippur. So they brought them to trial, and they prosecuted them to the extent that they needed to, and then the price was restored. Says the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai says that it is known that from this story, that there's no sin that damages economic prosperity of the Jewish people as much of the sin of sexual misconduct. This causes more destruction than anything else when it comes to Parnassah. The Pasuk in Mishlei, Proverbs, chapter 6, verse 26. It says, Ki biyad isha zonah at kikar lechem. That it's because a man, the literal translation is because a man brought a loaf of bread for a zonah, which is literally a harlot. The explanation of this is that an immoral woman damages the kikar lechem, the loaf of bread. And when there's a lack of abundance of prosperity, or whatever it is, a lack of abundance in parnasah, the first thing that needs to be examined is this sin. Because this, more than all other sins, and that's why we put this as number one, decreases prosperity. The Zohar in Parashat Naso, along these lines, goes and says, Rav Chalkia goes and says that, I'm quoting to you in English, torment will come upon a man who allows his wife to let the hair of her head show. For this, meaning keeping the hair covered, is one of the aspects of modesty, and a woman who lets her hair show in order to appear beautiful causes poverty in her home. Meaning, and by the way, just like I speak to men, and I speak to men, I speak to women. I speak to men, and I say, do you want your wife to cover their hair? And they, some obviously are very, very particular about it. Others say, I don't mind whether you ask or not. And many times, the reason why they don't mind is they don't realize the importance of it. And men can relate to this, because if you tell a man that if your wife uncovers her hair, that's going to cause a direct result in your loss in your business, that guy is going to make, if he cares about money, which generally 99.9% of men do, they're going to make sure that their woman goes and covers the hair. Women, on the other hand, you go and you say, I don't want to cover my hair. I'm not there yet. So when I get this, depending on the conversation, but if the conversation allows me, I usually say, so what are you doing to get there? Okay, so you're not there yet. And this is not only for covering hair in general, but this is a thing that we could ask ourselves in general. We're not in a certain level that we want to be. So the question we have to ask ourselves, so what are we doing to get to that level? And unfortunately, the response is nothing really. So you're not listening to classes about covering your hair. You're not reading books about covering your hair. You're not speaking to people about covering your hair. So you know that you want to get there. So what are you waiting for? Like a bolt of lightning to hit you and be like, okay, I got inspired and now I'm going to do it. Like you're waiting for an outside influence. Somebody who goes and waits for outside influence to change their own selves generally do not change themselves. Again, it can't happen, but you think about it like this. You think about a drug addict, that you go to this drug addict and you say, you should really stop, you should go to rehab. And be like, no, I know it's bad and I'm going to stop. So when are you going to stop? You ask them or her. And they say, I stop when I'm up for it. Right now, I'm not really up for it. Someone like that is not really interested in stopping and not really looking inside. If someone's interested in doing something, they do it. And if they're not there yet, then they're actively pursuing a method of trying to get there yet. And if they're not doing that means that they're not going to change. Don't wait for an outside type of inspiration. People don't realize the importance of covering their hair, and when I speak to people about it, sometimes it really gets. I really have to control myself because people are like, no, that's not really for me. I'm like, what does that mean? It's not for you. Since when is it optional? The Torah tells you to do something, and since when is it optional? I'll be like, well, I'll take this. This is not a buffet over here where your smorgasbord will be like, I'll have some of this, not of that. I'm allergic. I'll have some of that, and I'll take some of this, and I'll take some of that. Where are you going that you're choosing? It's not for me? You're not on the level yet? Okay, so then what are you doing to get on the level? So where are you doing it? And if you're not on the level, then let this get you to the level. Because this is in the Zohar. And Parashat Naso, if you want to go look it up, okay, that the Zohar says that if you want to have financial security, this is something that you need. This will cause, the lashon, its torment will come upon a man. Why would you want that? It causes, the actual also, it finishes off saying that this causes poverty in the home. Why would you want to cause poverty in your home? You would want to go shopping. You would want to be able to sit at home. You would want to be able to go and make sure you pay the mortgage. So listen to what the Torah is telling you. Listen to what it's saying. Cover your hair. The Gemara in Sotah, page 4b, goes and says, Amar Rava, Kol ha'ba'al isha zona lesof mevakesh kikar lechem. The Gemara goes and says that Rabbi says that anybody who engages in relations with an harlot will eventually be reduced to poverty and beg people for a loaf of bread. They will go and it will reduce them to poverty, meaning that this is all along the same umbrella of sexual impurity. Rabbi Yosef Chaim, the Ben Ish Chai, goes and says in Ben Yoda, and he explains this to be measure for measure, midah keneged midah, and that is that He goes and explains it to Yosef HaTzadik. Potiphar gave Yosef control over everything except for the bread that he ate. And the pasuk goes, this is a pasuk in Genesis, chapter 39, verse 6. Vayazav kol asher lo biyad Yosef. And Potiphar gave everything in his hands to Yosef. And then the pasuk goes on and says, Ki im alechem asher hu ochel. Except for the bread that he ate. What does that mean, except for the bread that he ate? That's referring to his wife. This was referred to Potiphar's wife, meaning everything except for Potiphar's wife. Where Shaykh is wife? Over here it says bread. It doesn't say anything with wife. We learn from here, this refers to the Ben Ish Chai, that wife is called bread. And furthermore, we know that abundance comes to man's house only for the sake of his wife. As the Pasuk says in Bereshit in Genesis, chapter 12, verse 16, La'avram heitiv ba'avura. And Avram Avinu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him, benefited him for her sake, for his wife's sake. Therefore, explains the Ben Ish Chai, that if somebody goes and abandons his lawful wife, whose sake his bread is being blessed, for the sake of Panasah of the house, and instead he goes with a harlot, then at the end he seeks a loaf of bread and he does not find it. This is midah keneged midah, explains the Ben Ish Chai, because you have a wife at home, and instead you went to a place of ill repute. So because your wife at home, which represents the bread, or which represents your panasah, you left that and you went to find a harlot, now you won't be able to find the bread which represents by your wife, which is the merit of your wife, that you have bread in your house, meaning panasah in your house. Taking this step further, Yosef was the foundation of panasah of Egypt, of Mitzrayim. He sanctified himself in this area of sexual purity, and that opened the storehouses of abundance for him. And it's something very interesting. Without getting too much into the Kabbalistic aspect of the Sfirot, a tzaddik is associated with the Sfirah of Yesod, as it says in Mishlei chapter 10, verse 25, the tzaddik Yesod Olam. A righteous person is the foundation of the world, but Yesod is also one of the Sfirot, the Sfirah of Yesod. And Yosef HaTzadik is known to be the one who personified the Sfirah of Yesod. The Sfirah, and this is how Yosef, who is associated with Yesod, is specifically because he exhibited the purity with regards to Potiphar's wife. Now there's something very interesting. The name Yosef, if we take the name and we do the numerical value, so the numerical value is gematria, so every letter is associated with a number, with a numeric value. So Aleph is 1, Beis is 2, Gimel is 3, so on and so forth. You take the word Yosef. Yosef is Yud, Vav, Samach, and Fei. So you have Yud is 10, plus Vav is 6, plus Samach is 60, plus Fei is 80. That equals to a total number of 156. Yosef's numerical value is 156. Now we know that Hashem's name regarding mercy, we know that Yud Kei Vav Kei, Yud Hey and Vav and a Hey, that the numerical value is 26. If you take 26 and you times it by 6, that equals 156, which is, the 6 is in reference to the Sfirah of Yesod. 6 times, this hints to the perfection of the 6 Sfirot, which goes into the makeup of the Sfirah of Yesod. Again, it's a little bit Kabbalistic. If you're not with me so far, it's fine, just bear with me. The number 6 is also the letter Vav. Vav is also represented by holiness. I want to share with you something from the Ben Ish Chai. If you bear with me. Bring out the board. Let's take out this board if you guys can read it. Okay, so the word kadosh in holy in Hebrew, so there's holy, there's a masculine form and there's a feminine form. So the word for holy in the masculine form is kadosh, and the word for in the feminine form is kedosha. So the letters of the holiness is kadosh. Now something very interesting. Just bearing a little bit off topic on the word kadosh. Bitachon. The shorish of bitachon is bet, ches, and tes. That's the shorish of the bitachon. Now, if you take those 3 letters and you spell them out like we explained earlier, so you have bet is bet yotet, and then tes is tes yotet, and then ches is ches yotet. These are the only 3 letters, says the Ben Ish Chai, that their letter, the way that they're spelled out, is completed with a yud and a tet. Yud and a taf. the numerical value of Yud and a Taf is 410, the same numerical value as Kadosh. Just for Betach, the shorsh of that is from Bitachon, the holiness of Bitachon, which is again the series that we're dealing with. Again, okay, bear with me. Excuse me. Okay, so now taking that information. So you take the letters of Kadosh and Kedosha, and we said the holiness, the holy letter, one of the holy letters. Obviously, all letters are holy, but specifically by the holy letter of the Vav. If you remove that from Kadosh and Kedosha, what are you left with? You're left with Kadesh and Kedesha. So if you take the letters of Kadosh and Kedosha and you remove the letter Vav, you're left with Kadesh and Kadesha. What is the letter Kadesh and Kadesha? The pasuk in Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 23 verse 18, excuse me, says, Lo tiyeh Kadesha b'bnot Yisrael, v'lo yeh Kadesh b'bnei Yisrael. What is the word Kadesh and Kadesha? This is referring to what? Promiscuous man, promiscuous woman, in the more crude terms, a prostitute, someone who is of ill repute. You take the Kadosh and you remove the Vav, you remove the holiness from it, you remove the Yisod from it. What are you left with? You're left with Kadesh and Kadesha, the impurity aspect of a person going and practicing these actions of ill repute. So taking that into mind, again, bear with me. Taking that into mind, you take the word for wealth. The word for wealth is Hoin. Hoin is He Vav Nun. The essential letter again is Vav. And what does Hoin mean? As we see in Tehillim chapter 112 verse 3, Hoin ve'oisher beveisav etzet kasay v'edes la'ad. Hoin is referred to wealth. The translation of Hoin is wealth. Speaking about our topic, what happens when you remove the Vav, you remove this holiness from the word Hoin, it becomes Hein. What's Hein? Hein, says the Torah, Hein is in reference to death. And we see in Devarim chapter 31 verse 14, Vayomar Hashem el Moshe, Hein kalvu yamecha lamut. Your days are getting close to die. Hein is a reference to death. By the way, a lot of what we're saying over here today is, especially when we're taking the words, is from Rabbi Matisyahu Glazerson. Forgot to quote him at the beginning. So he goes and says like this. Rabbi Matisyahu goes and brings it down, the Gemara from Nedarim. The Gemara in Nedarim, page 64b, goes and says that Arba chashuvim met. There are 4 people that are considered as if they are dead. Number 1 is ani, a poor person. A poor person is considered as if he's dead. Now that really is the focus of today, but we'll just go on to the other 4. The other 3 are Mitzorah, someone who is a leper, Suma, someone who is blind, Umisha en lo banim, and someone who doesn't have any children. Those are the 4 aspects of people that are considered dead, according to the Gemara in Darim, page 64b. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes and tells Moshe Rabbeinu to go return to Egypt. Why? Because the people that sought your life, they died. Look at this. You can look at this in Exodus in Shemot chapter 4 verse 19. All the people that wanted to go and seek after you, they have died. Says the Gemara in Nedarim, page 64b again, goes and says that who are these men that sought to kill or destroy Moshe Rabbeinu? These were none other than Dasan and Aviram. Datan and Aviram. These were the ones that they wanted to go after Moshe Rabbeinu. But we know they didn't die yet. They got out of Egypt. So what does the Gemara says? That rather they didn't die, but they lost all their wealth. And from here the Chachamim, the sages, learn that poverty, somebody who loses money, is considered is equivalent to as if they died. It's equivalent to death. And this is actually, it's very interesting. The Chavetz Chaim, and it's quoted in Rabbi Chanan Wasserman's Kovetz Ma'amar, goes and says a pasuk in Amos, chapter 9, verse 10, that's in reference to what will happen in the time of the final redemption, whereby it's reference that all the sinful people shall perish in the final redemption. The Zohar goes and explains that the decree of the sword, meaning death, this changes to the decree of poverty, meaning that poverty will increase during the time of the final redemption. And we see over here something very interesting, that somebody that goes, first of all, let's take a step back. We see over here that someone who goes and loses money is considered as if they died. And what is the reference of death over here? That's Hein. that is the letters of Hain. What's Hain? That's when you take Hain, when you take wealth, and you remove the Vav, and you remove the power of Kedusha, the power of Yisod, the power of sexual purity, then you're left with death. And what's death? Death is none other than, well, besides one aspect of that, but death is also here in reference to financial poverty, where you don't have any money. So we see over here the powerful power of being pure in this area of our life. And this goes to all areas, whether it's in modesty, whether it's in wasting seed, whether it's in dressing, or the way. There's so many different aspects that all come into here. And one of the biggest skulat, this is the first one of our discussion today, is the skula of losing your money is not being careful in this realm. Not being careful in this realm causes a tremendous lack of success in the financial realm. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah, page 18b, goes and says that one who indulges in leitzanut will sustain a decrease of income. Leitzanut is like sort of a lightheadedness. Now here's something very interesting, and I was thinking, there's a lot of stuff over here that I went, and as I was reviewing this, I was like taking things out, putting things in, because I really tried to simplify this. But and I hope I didn't lose you until now. But if I did, just bear with me, you'll still get some of it. If I didn't, then amazing. The letter kaf, when you spell it out, it's kuf and pei, or kuf and endefei. Now, there's a positive aspect to the word and there's a negative aspect to the word. And this generally goes to the majority of the words. So you have the positive aspect to the word kuf is kedusha, which starts with kuf. And the negative side is kof, which means monkey. It's the way that you spell kuf is the same way that you spell monkey. So when you take the letter kof, maybe we should visualize this a little bit. So when you take the letter kuf and you write it out, so it's kuf and endefei. The numerical value of kuf is 100. The numerical value of pei is 80 for the total numerical value of 180. I just realized I was blocking it. Now, when you take a number and something is 10 times that number. This is the gematria realm, so I hope I'm not going to lose you with this. So bear with me. When you take a number and you take 10 times that number, 10 is the number that of completion and perfection. So for example, if you take the word chai, so word chai is ches and yud. And the numerical value of ches and yud is 18. 10 times that, meaning the perfection of that, is 180. Is the perfection of that, meaning 10 is the completion of the perfection of the number of whatever it is. So 10 times chai, which is literally the Rabbi Kuf referring to kedusha over here, is the perfection of the life force. On the negative side of this, you take the word chet. So ches, tes, aleph. This numerical value, so I have 8, 9, and 1. That's 18. You have 18. That's also 18 times 10 is also equal to 180. So we see over here on the positive side you have chai, you have life. On the negative side you have chet, you have sin, and both of them equal to you times it by the 10 by the maximum sort of it, and you get to the what? You get to 180. So you have over here that by the means of holiness of kedusha, you're able to build yourself what? The chai, the life. But by the means of avera, of sins, you're able to destroy that life that you have. You're able to destroy that. I hope that you're with me so far. Now, something very interesting. The number 180 is also the numerical value of the word leitzan. Leitzan is from the shorosh of leitzanut, of lightheadedness, of mockery. The way that this is explained is that mockery, lightheadedness, is also very, very closely related to sexual misconduct, znut. These things are very, very closely related, and hence the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, page 18b, says that one who indulges in this mockery and this lightheadedness will sustain a decrease of income, because again, this is in the same realm of things. Moving along. The next thing is something very interesting. This is from the Shvilei Pinchas, or Pinchas Friedman. Says the Shvilei Pinchas, quotes of Gemara in Bava Metzia, page 59a. And it says, L'olam yeh. This is really for the men, but women should listen to it, but definitely the men that are listening, please pipe up if you didn't listen to it until now. Well, the truth is, if you didn't listen until now, rewind and listen to it again. But this is something very, very important. And the Gemara in Bava Metzia, page 59a, goes and says, Lo'olam yehei adam zahir, a person should always be very careful, b'chvod ishto, in honoring his wife. She'ein bracha mitzuya b'toch beito, that a person's blessing is not found inside his house, shel adam, ela b'shvil ishto, only because of his wife. Again, the translation of that is that a person must always be careful about honoring his wife, as blessing is found in the home of a person's house only because of his wife. And this is based off a pasuk in Bereshit, Genesis chapter 12, verse 16. And Avraham benefited her for her sake. Meaning that because of Sarah, Avraham was successful in his financial realms. And therefore, the Gemara goes on and says that Rabbi told the people of Mechazah, that goes and says that honor your wife so that you will become rich. And so this is what the Gemara says. Now, if we could ask a daring question, and that is, why? Why is it that if you honor your wife, that is a blessing of panasah, of success, of financial success? Explains the Shvilei Pinchas. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why did God punish Avraham? Why did God punish Adam HaRishon for the sin of the Eitz Hadas by making him work for his living? If we look at Bereshit, chapter 3, verse 19, Adam was cursed from eating the Eitz Hadas with Bize'at Apecha Tochal Lechem. He was cursed for what? For going by the sweat of your brow, by the sweat of your face, now you're going to have to eat bread. But when we look about it, like, why was that curse put in? When you look at it, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded Adam not to eat from the tree, he was only warned of one thing, the penalty of death. As it says in Bereshit, chapter 2, verse 17, that says, Umina Eitz Hadas tov v'ra lo tochal. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling Adam HaRishon, don't eat from the tree of good and evil. Ki biyom achalcha mimenu mot tamut. From the day that you're going to eat from it, you're going to die. So, I just see that everybody's having some skipping in that. I apologize. I don't know. I think my internet connection is fine. Yeah, it looks like I'm connected. I don't want to switch connection, but I'll try next time to do a different connection. But I hope it's good, okay, at this point. Going back to the Pasuk in Bereshit goes and says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu went, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Adam HaRishon that if you're going to go and if you're going to eat from the tree of good and bad, you can eat from the Eitz Hadas, your punishment is going to be death. So why is it all of a sudden that Adam did the sin, and now HaKadosh Baruch Hu there was death coming to the world, and now all of a sudden there's a bonus punishment? What's a bonus punishment of going and now punishing Adam HaRishon's livelihood? So it says the Shvilei Pinchas that if you look at Bereshit chapter 2, verse 5, where it says that after the trees and the grass and everybody was created, there was no yet trees in the earth. There was no herbs on the earth yet. Why, says Rashi? Because it didn't rain. And Rashi goes and explains, why didn't it rain yet? Because there was no man to work the soil. There was no man. Why was there no man to work the soil? Meaning, says Rashi, let's try to explain this. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu went and created the world was created and all the vegetation was like under the earth. When it rained, all of a sudden it sprouted for all the vegetation. But why did it have to wait? Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu have to make it wait till Adam HaRishon was created and then it rained? Says Rashi, because that if nobody would be created, nobody would recognize the benefits of rain, and hence it didn't go and it didn't rain yet. And when Adam came, when he was created, and he realized there's a necessity for the world, so he prayed for the rain, and they came. Meaning, says the Shvilei Pinchas, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not allow the rain to fall unless there was somebody who would recognize and appreciate the rain. And along these lines, the Ramban, in the end of Parashat Bo, goes and says that we have to be careful with the small mitzvah like a big mitzvah. Why? Because they're all beloved. Because the purpose of mitzvot, the purpose of all the commandments that we have to do is one of the many purposes, is that we have to acknowledge and believe in God and to thank God. That is the purpose of creation. And it's very interesting that we're taking these two ideas, the purpose of creation to thank God and the aspect of rain. In fact, the Torah associates the reward for the observance of mitzvot to rainfall. And the punishment of neglecting the Torah is also, we also see that with withholding of rainfall. And we see this in two places. Number one, in Devarim chapter 11, verse 13 to verse 14, where it says, I hope this sounds familiar to you, because you should be saying it every single day. This is part of the Shema, where it goes and says that you have to listen to everything that I'm going to say, everything that I commanded you. And the next pasuk goes, V'nasati metar atzachem bi'ito. I am going to give you rain in your land in its time. And then the meaning that if you listen to God, you will get rain in its time. You will get the rain. And if you don't listen, you don't get it. Look at what it says in Vayikra, chapter 20, in chapter 26, verse 3. If you follow my commandments, my statute, my observe my commands, you'll follow all my mitzvot. Then what does the pasuk goes and says? I will give you rain. Meaning we see over here there's a connection between keeping the mitzvot and rain. The observant of mitzvot stems from an obligation to show our gratitude for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, well, one of them, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu taking us, for example, out of Egypt. So when we observe all the mitzvot, it is clear that we recognize the gratitude of all that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has done for us, and hence the reward is what? Is for rain. And failure to absorb the mitzvot, meaning failure of having gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a lack of appreciation, is a lack of rain. And this is why we can see something so beautiful. Oh, this is so beautiful. We look in Gemara and Tanit, page 7a, that the Gemara says something so hard to understand unless you have this concept. And the Gemara goes and says, Gadol Yom HaGashamim Ki Yom Shenitna Bo Torah. A day that would, listen to this crazy statement of the Gemara. A day on which rain falls is as momentous as a day in which the Torah was given. Now this question is very, very interesting. Why is it, and I see, by the way, my connection is not stable. I'm going to switch to a different, I'm switching to a different internet, Wi-Fi, so I hope that this is okay. Okay, so the Gemara goes and says that, I just realized I might be connected, so hold on, bear with me. Are you guys still with me? No, I'm skipped out. Okay, I should be back. I tried to switch to a different internet connection, but it didn't work. Okay, whatever it is, we're going to stick to it with whatever we are. I should be back now. So the Gemara goes in Tanit, page 7a, goes and says, Gadol Yom HaGashamim Ki Yom Shenitna Bo Torah. A day on which rain falls is as great as a day in which the Torah was given. Now the question is, it seems surprising. How could the Gemara say such a thing? A day that the rain is just like the day that the Torah was given? Explains Rav Pinchas Friedman, it goes and says the Torah was given to Yisrael, what? So that they should keep the mitzvot. What was one of the reasons? So that express the gratitude to God. That God goes and provides us. Therefore, that what happens is when we go and we listen to the Torah, and we keep the mitzvot, HaKadosh Baruch Hu provides us in rain. And this is, in return, this is because we're expressing the gratitude. So something so unbelievable here, the greatness of giving of the Torah is realized on the day that it's rain. Because we see over here that just when we're going and we're following the mitzvah, and we have the rain, so we see everything go and plugged in together so beautifully. So going back now to Adam HaRishon. Adam goes and he failed to appreciate the kindness and the favor that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has performed for him. As it says in Bereshit, chapter 3, verse 12. Ha'isha asher natata imadi. The woman that you gave to me, she is the one that went and gave me from the fruit of the tree. HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes over to Adam HaRishon and says, Adam, what happened? Why did you eat from the tree? And Adam's like, oh no, it's not my fault. It's not me, it's the evil eye. Obviously he didn't say the evil eye. He's pointing something on a different area. It's the woman. It's the woman. It's her fault. You gave me this woman and she was the one who caused me to sin. So Adam HaRishon he was showing the lack of gratitude of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him an Ezel Kenegdo. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a wife just for Adam HaRishon. And Adam HaRishon didn't show the gratitude. And we know the purpose of all the mitzvot. One of them is to show the gratitude. And the blessing for that is what? Is parnasah, is rain. And hence, this is why it's not sort of like a punishment, it was sort of a consequence. Adam HaRishon showed a lack of gratitude. You show a lack of gratitude, and then in order to go and get the parnasah, which is associated with gratitude, now you're going to have to go and bezat apech hatoch alechem. And this is why The Gemara goes and it says, "Le'olam yeheh adam zayeh b'chvod ishto." You always have to make sure that you honor your wife, because the blessing of the home is what? Because of the wife. How important it is that you have to honor the wife. Where does it all stem from? It all stems from gratitude. You have to have gratitude. You have to have gratitude. We see over here, besides the fact of the amount of gratitude that one has to have to HaKadosh Baruch Hu over here, we see over here the importance of honoring your spouse, of how important it is to have honor to your spouse. Give honor to your spouse. Look at what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to you. Look at what you got. Did you stop for a second and think? Did you stop for a second and appreciate what God has given you? This is what we started off the class where, like, everybody has so much requests that they want from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But did you stop for a second and thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for what you have? We all feel like we're lacking and we want more. And may HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us, ad bli dai, keep on giving us more. But do we stop for a second? Do we use our eye to look at only the kesef? Or do we stop and use our eye and look at HaKadosh Baruch Hu, look up into Shemayim and say, thank you HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all that you're giving, gratitude of all that we have? The time is getting a little bit late, so let's try to wrap it up with the last few skulot to lose money. The Gemara in Sotah, page 4b goes, that says that anybody who has an arrogant spirit, it's considered as if they've committed every form of forbidden relations. And this also, arrogance, is something that causes someone to lose the blessing of Parnasah. The Shla goes and says also that machloket, arguments, this causes so much lack of Parnasah. And furthermore, it states that one machloket, one argument, repels 100 Parnasot. And it's interesting, if you take the word machloket and you move the words around of it a little bit, it spells chelek mavet. Machloket spells chelek mavet, a piece of death. How far we have to stay from machloket, from any arguments, from any of these. It could be between family members, it could be between inheritance, it could be between siblings, it could be between partners, it could be between friends. How far we have to go and stay from machloket. Now, needless to say, of course, between a husband and a wife. And it's something very interesting. On that lines, shalom. Shalom is peace. Okay, we don't have that much time, but I got to show you something very cool. We're taking this out. Okay, I didn't write this down yet. So, I'll do it without the board. So you take shalom. Shalom, the letters are shin, lamed, vav, and mem. And you take the first letter of shin that is connected with esh, with fire. And this is in reference to the strict judgment of din and gvua. Then you have the final letter mem that represents mayim, which is water. And water symbolizes kindness and mercy. So you have the shin of shalom on one side, you have the mem of shalom at the opposite end. One is reference to din and gvua, another is reference to kindness and mercy, chesed and rachamim, and then you have the middle. The middle is the vav and the lamed vav, which is 36, which is in essence 6 times 6, the quality of the tzaddik, which we're not going to get into again to too much detail because I don't want to lose you too much, but there is a little bit of a hint over here to the lamed vav tzaddikim in the world. But we see over here the 6 again, the power of the power of the tzaddikim, the power of, and by the way, something very interesting, just to throw in another tidbit over here, which either I'm going to lose you even more, or it's going to be even more beautiful, that one of the few people that is called tzaddik is Yosef HaTzaddik. One of the few people at Tzaddik Yisod Olam is reference to this Yisod, this powerful of the number 6. Anyways, moving along, now that you're duly confused, the Gemara in Psachim, page 113b, goes and says, the next thing, somebody, a skula for losing money, is someone who's disrespectful and wasteful to the treatment of food, especially bread. You have to be careful because this causes poverty. You have to treat that with respect. And if you take bread, you don't throw it out in the garbage. You take bread and you put it in a special bag. Obviously, you don't throw bread like frisbee, or you have to have special respect for the food as well. And this not only goes for bread, but this goes also to all food. You should not use food as never should you ever be participate in any such a thing like a food fight. That's a disaster. Besides a disgusting, low life type of thing to do, it's also a not a good skula for keeping your money. Next, the Gemara in Bava Metzia, page 71a, goes and says that somebody who loans money on interest that would also cause somebody to go and to lose money. The Gemara, the next thing, going a little bit fast over here because I want to finish up over here. The Gemara in Sukkah, page 29b, goes and says that somebody who delays, there's a few things that causes poverty. One of the things that it speaks about is you delay paying your workers. Or another thing is also depriving the workers of the wages, and as well as arrogance. The Gemara also brings down over there. But what I really want to focus is the delay of paying your workers. I have a student that I meant to follow up with him on this, but I forgot to, that he used to work for somebody who was extremely wealthy. And this guy owed him a few $1,000s. And he went over to him and he says, you owe me a few $1,000s, when can you pay? And he started laughing in his face. And my student goes over to him and says, why are you, what's going on? Why are you laughing? And he goes over to him and says, his boss was very, very wealthy. It's not like he needed the money. He had plenty of money. He had it. He doesn't need it. He says, you have the money. Why are you not giving it? Why can't you pay me off? And he's like, he pushes him off from here. The amount of aggravation that he caused them for a few $1,000s, which was nothing. And to this day, I can't understand people that they have the money, and again, I'm not judging them because, to everybody, to each their own test, but they have people that have money and they don't pay their workers, or they don't pay somebody that they owe money to. I'm why are you not doing that? And it's not the fact that they want to steal. That's something else. They're planning on paying it, but for some reason they're delaying it. Why would you do that? What would be one reason to even think about doing that? Someone did work for you, you make sure you pay them right away. You don't wait till the next day. If I have anybody that does any work for me, I try to make sure, we agreed on a price. I try to make, as soon as they finish the job, I make sure that I pay them. Why would you want to delay it? What would be the reason? Well, you want to keep it in your bank for another day? You're saving for something. The interest, you're getting nothing from it. But unfortunately, this is one of the things that causes somebody to go and lose their panasa. In addition, the Sfat Emet goes and brings down based on Midrash in the Miglat Esther, that goes and says that why does Klal Yisrael suffer so much cruel decrees? Why do they suffer? And one of the reasons is because of the desecration of Shabbat. The desecration of Shabbat causes also a losing of a lot of financial benefit. There's a long list of things that causes, just to do a little bit of a recap, that causes this type of financial destruction. One of them is obviously Shabbat, which we just spoke about before. Again, there's more to speak about in B'ezrat Hashem in the next class. But Shabbat is a huge thing. You have people that steal, fraud, dishonesty, infidelity, sadness, also depression, anger, worry, wasting seed, breach of family purity, anger, lightheadedness, anything related to the sexual impurity. These are all very, very closely related to your parnasah. So finishing off, I just want to finish off with something a little bit on the cute aspect, a little bit of the beautiful aspect. That even if, let's say, somebody went and somebody unfortunately fell in this realm of whatever it is, never ever feel like, okay, it's done. So I lost my parnasah and I'm not going to be able to do anything anymore because it's a lost cause. If somebody, look at this, how beautiful it is. If somebody is rasha, resh and ayin, you take that and you, what is the word? Mix the words. You mix the words around them. It comes osher. It becomes wealth. And you take somebody who did pesha. Pesha is somebody that did a crime, did something bad. That can also turn into shefa. And shefa is the abundance that you have. So no matter where you're holding in your life, and if maybe you are not on the level that you wanted to be, and maybe you feel like you did things that caused you to lose out on certain panasah, just realize that there's nothing that stops in the way of tshuva. And you have the ability to do tshuva and get back all that you lost. I hope that this was clear. I hope that it came out clear. I really tried to make it clear. It's a little bit of complex topics, but I tried to make it as clear and simple. And again, I took out a lot of things to try to simplify it a little bit. So again, I hope you guys are with me, and I hope you guys understood it. I'll tell you right off the bat, this class And next class, B'ezrat Hashem, is a little bit different than what we usually do. Next class a little bit more, but the next class I'll tell you got to bring a pen and paper because you will have to definitely have to write down those things. With that, we will open up to any questions that anybody has. No questions.
I wasn't here for the beginning of the class, so I don't know if you spoke about this, but what do you say about like wearing very, let's say, brand names like around public places where people see them? Does that like affect your wealth in any way?
I'm sorry, I lost you there a little bit. Maybe my volume is really low. Okay, can you repeat that? I only heard part in public something. Can you please repeat that?
Okay, so I wasn't here for the beginning of the class. I don't know if you spoke about this, but what did you say about like, like let's say you're wearing brand names out in public and there are people that obviously can't afford that. Is that like, will that affect your wealth in any way? So
your question is actually very interesting. Your question is, what about wearing brand name clothes in public and people would feel like they're not on, they can't afford it? Is that where you're going?
Yeah.
Okay, so that actually, I didn't speak about this, but I'm happy that you did bring this up. So that is in the area of flaunting your benefits. So it's funny because when I started off speaking about the evil eye and how people tend to blame, things instead of looking into their own lives, they blame it on the evil eye. But in essence, that could be, and I did mention it, that could be a cause. So what happens is if somebody flaunts their blessings to other people, then that could cause a loss of financial thing through an evil eye, because that is an actual, an accurate, an outcome. That if somebody goes and let's say let's make it a little bit more of a clear example, lives in a neighborhood where people don't have much money and people are struggling to get by, and they drive in their bright red Ferrari with a blown out muffler or whatever it's called, when they drill holes in a muffler that they wake up the dead people as they drive past by. So everybody should go and see them and look at them and see what they have, and they dress in this very ostentatious type of things. Then they're causing attention to themselves, and if they're causing attention to themselves, so then what happens is people say, "Why? That's not fair. How come he has it and I don't? How come she's able to have that and I don't?" So you have over here where you can open up your blessings to an evil eye, where people going and you're flaunting your blessings, which is also something we shouldn't be doing. You're flaunting your blessing, and that causes other people to look at you and start putting a judgment on you on Shemaim, saying, "Why do they have it and I don't?" And then what happens? What's an evil eye? An evil eye is they start opening up the books in Shemaim in heaven and say, "Right, why do they have it? How come this person does have a red Ferrari and this person doesn't? Do they deserve it?" And nobody wants their books opened up. Nobody wants to be audited. Not in this world, not in the next world. Even if you're 100% kosher, you want to stay away from that. So that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, that can be also a cause. I just brought in a few of the main causes, but there's definitely more, and that's definitely one of them.